didn't. Table real quick. Give me anything off the door. I'm gonna preach with this time. You guys can take a seat off. Might as well bring them up. I like to see people's faces. So, in case you haven't heard, this has been a fun challenge. So we're going to try to cover the entire book of Ruth tonight. Woo! We're going to cover a lot, and we're going to move fast. It's going to take a lot of participation. So I'm going to start a little bit of prayer, and we're going to dive into it. So, dear Father, Lord, I just thank you. Lord, I just thank you for who you are. Lord, it's a wonderful night as we wrap up this school year. I thank you for the new faces here, people who've been here the whole time. Lord, I just thank you for that. Lord, I ask that tonight that we might encounter you, that we might get a picture of who Jesus is. Lord, whatever I say, let it be yours. If it's not yours, don't let it be said. Just bless this night and overwhelm us with your Spirit. Let us see Jesus and fall in love with him. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Now we're going to start with a little dialogue, a little conversation between us, okay? So what I need you to do is I'm going to remember those 3 ideas I gave you in the very beginning. We're going to cover all those again. What I need you to do is shout out words you associate with those things, okay? So the first one we're going to talk about is famine or desperation or anything along with that. So I need you to shout out words. When I say the word famine, what do you think? Just shout it out.
Hunger. Joseph.
Hunger, grief. What else we got?
Loneliness.
Loneliness, okay. Anything else?
Fear.
Fear, death, anger. Any other ones?
Exhaustion.
Exhaustion, okay.
Joseph.
That's a good one. Next one. I want you to shout out characteristics of Jesus.
Love.
Love. Cool.
Save.
Save.
Grace.
Grace.
Mercy.
Mercy. Self.
Steady.
Provision. Steady.
Suffering.
Suffering.
All powerful.
All powerful. Good. That's a good one.
Warm.
Warm.
Understanding.
Understanding.
God.
God.
Man.
Man. All right. What about the word marriage?
Love.
Love. Oh, there we go again.
Covenant.
Covenant.
Cooties.
Cooties.
Forever.
Forever.
Rings.
Sorry. What else?
Unity.
Unity.
Trust.
Trust.
Church.
The church.
Someday.
Sunday.
Someday.
Sunday. Sunday. Woo!
This Sunday.
It's a whole different level.
Yeah, Sunday.
What about, all right, let's throw a tricky one. What about harvest? What do you think when you hear the word harvest?
Joy.
Joy.
Bountiful.
Bountiful. Someone said something else.
I said plenty.
Plenty.
Food.
Food.
Gold.
Gold.
Celebration.
Celebration.
Good.
Good.
Love.
Well, anyone think Southern?
Much.
Southern. Woo! Yeah. All right. This is one more thing we're going to do. This is going to keep showing up throughout the thing. When I say after famine, you're going to repeat comes harvest. Okay? It's really simple. After famine comes harvest.
harvest.
All right. One more time. After famine
Comes harvest.
After famine
Comes
harvest.
After famine
Comes
Got it. All right. Just remember when I say after famine.
Comes
That's
harvest.
harvest.
Come on now. I'm just kidding. All right. So what we're going to do? We're going to dive into this, and I think how we're going to dive into this. There's 4 pictures that come out of the book of Ruth. And I think they're really some cool pictures that kind of cover the whole thing. So we're going to start in Ruth 1, 1 through 5, and then we're just going to move from there. So if you have a Bible, take it out. If you have paper, which you do, write notes, write thoughts, and we'll dive into this. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was, I'm calling him Lucky because I can't pronounce his name, so he's Lucky. Whatever that is. And the name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of the 2 sons were? Yeah, exactly. The 2 sons. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah, and they went to the country of Moab and remained there. But Lehi, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with the 2 sons. And then they took up Moabite wives. The name of one was Oprah. And the name, it's not really Oprah, but the name of Oprah and the other is Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years, and both the two sons died, so that the woman was left without her two sons and her husband. In case you didn't pick up this is a really weird story that doesn't make a lot of sense in our time context. And so I kind of want to paint a little image of what's going on. See, the Ruth is set in the time of Judges. For those who don't know, Judges is kind of like, I kind of picture it as like when the American colonies were first getting started. You know, all these little tribes that are connected because they're a nation or a group of people, but they don't really have a central government. They all do their own thing. And so they come out of Egypt and they've walked around, they've wandered around, and they followed God and had these great leaders, and now those leaders are dead. And so they have this nation, but it's kind of disjointed. And in this disjointedness, you get a lot of chaos, you get a lot of calamity. And every once in a while, a leader will step up and fight some bad guys, and that's about all they do. And then they die away, and you just have this weird hodgepodge of people. And they're not really doing a good job of following God. So I think it's very interesting, in the middle of this time of the Judges that doesn't make a lot of sense, we get this story of marriage. We get this beautiful picture of marriage. We don't just get a beautiful picture of marriage, we get a beautiful picture of a harvest story. I told you it was a harvest story, and some of you guys have no clue what I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk like this real quick and tell you, when I'm from East Tennessee. In East Tennessee, in the fall, is harvest time. And in harvest time, boys in the county, those are the county schools. I did not go to county school. Boys in county school put on their boots, and they go out and they harvest. It's really a simple process. And they go out, and so all the work that they've done in that year, they go out and they harvest it. And it's reaping the benefits of the hard work that they put into the year. And you can walk around, and you have hay bales, and it smells like cow, and it's a wonderful time of the year. It's just wonderful. But in reality, it is. It's this reaping the reward. And so this is the story we're going to get. So after famine,
Harvest!
You're witty bunch. All right.
Harvest.
The next thing you need to know is, I said, there's a famine in the land. And so in this famine, ironically, we're set in Bethlehem. I hope you guys know where that is, or what it is at least. They're set in Bethlehem, and Bethlehem means land of bread, but there is no bread. It's kind of ironic. And so Lecky and his family, Naomi, we're calling him Lucky, or Lecky, they decide to leave. Elimelech. So going by Lecky. They decide to leave in this moment. There's no bread, there's no food, and they leave. And I think a lot of us relate to this, because I know when bad things like to happen, I like to leave. If you get me really angry, I'm like, deuces. And I walk off. Like that's how we're kind of born sometimes, and we try to run away. I know this happened earlier this year. Sally and I were having a conversation. I was like, listen, I just kind of want to run away. And she was like, you better leave a trail of breadcrumbs, or I'll call the police. But seriously, this is these moments where it's just really hard, and we try to run away from our problems. Another example was last summer, I had never wanted to go back home. I hated Johnson City. I didn't like the accent, and I had some rough past there, and I did not want to go back to it. Some of you guys can relate. It's summer, it's coming up, you're thinking, oh crap, home, I don't want to go home, I don't want to go home. And we try to run from our problems in these moments, and I tried to stay my butt right here in Nashville, and it didn't work out too well. And so this is what we get. Lecky and Naomi and their whole family take off, and they leave. To make matters worse, when they get there, good old Elimelech Lecky dies. He kills over. He's not lucky anymore. Kills over. And then on top of that, the two sons, who we still don't know their names, marry Moabite women. And this is a big sin. It doesn't make a lot of sense to us, because we're like, they just married some weird, like foreign women. Chris Ammerman would be really proud. But they marry some foreign women, but it's a sin, and they're not supposed to do that. And so this, and then in repercussion, and I'm not saying they're getting punished, but in the end, they die too. So now we have Lucky and his family. The dad dies, the two kids die, and Naomi is left with her two daughters-in-law. And so she's like, all right, this sucks. Life sucks. There's a famine. I have no family anymore. I got these two daughters that represent everything that's bad, so we'll go home. And she looks at her daughters. She says, hey, don't come with me. You stay here, because you need to understand, some of us take this and we're like, dang, Naomi is a bitter old hag. But in honesty, it's this moment where she looks at these two daughters, these two Moabite women, and she sees them and she goes, these are representations of my sin and my struggles. And as long as they follow me, I'm going to keep remembering, because I got to get rid of its bad. I ran from one problem, and I'm going to cut this problem away, and I'm going to run back And we see this picture of Ruth's like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm stuck to you. And so Naomi has to go back, and we see her frustration and her bitterness in this moment. It comes out in verse 20 and 21. She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" And in this moment, in this famine, in this frustration, she's just so bitter. Her sin's following her around. One won't leave her. It's like a tumor. It's a nice tumor, but it's like a tumor. Her family's died. And she's just so bitter. And I relate to this so much this year. It's because it's been it's a good year, but it's a bad year. It's a good year because I've been falling in love with Jesus and chasing Him. But just in case you haven't figured out, it's not always the easiest thing to fall in love with Jesus and chase Him. And there's been times I'm like, freaking Jesus, why am I? This sucks. I'm really lonely. I don't understand what you're doing. This hurts. Why am I doing this? And I've been really bitter. I've been really frustrated. And I've called Peter Kennison at least 47 times. He's my best friend. I'm like, hey, dude, it sucks. To the point he's like, what's your problem this time? And this is what it's felt like this year. And some of us, it's coming up finals. And you have all these things to do, and you have tests, and you have projects, and you have 37 people you got to hang out with, plus boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever it is, your mom, and you're doing this, and you're like, this sucks. I don't want to do this no more. I want to go home. I just want to hide in my room. And I lock the door, don't want to come out. And you're really starting to get frustrated. And this is the picture that it paints for us. This very first scene of Ruth is this picture of frustration and famine in the land. I'm going to stop, and I got a question for you. And so I want you to raise your hand if you want to answer. If not, I'm going to call on you anyways. It's that simple of a process. The question is, when has there been a time when you've been frustrated or in famine? I'll give you a couple seconds. Write it down if you want. Brainstorm. And I'm going to raise your hand when you're ready. I need 3 people.
Well, in middle school, I was definitely frustrated. I had like no friends from elementary school. I alienated myself pretty well. So what I tried to do is I tried to change who I was to become like what people wanted. And I keep finding myself doing this. I keep changing who I am to like make myself more acceptable in the world. And like whenever I finally think I figured it out, like it ends up backfiring like in a huge way, and it's just so frustrating sometimes. And then like just to parallel that, like so many times I'm like, God, what do you want me to be? And like of course I know what He wants me to be, and I constantly cannot become that. It's like the only thing I can become is something that the world says that they want me to be, and once I am that, then they don't want me anymore. Like anyway, so it's like that can be very frustrating. Like constantly trying to change. Like either for the bad or for the good. Like either way, change stinks.
Yeah. Thank you. How long about you?
When I think of famine and frustration, my mind immediately goes back to fall semester of freshman year. For me, it was just really lonely, and I still have a lot of issues at home, a lot of pressure from friends and my family. My mom was really sick, and I just felt worn down all the time. No matter how much I slept, I couldn't find rest, and no matter how much I prayed, I couldn't find peace. I just felt like I was being worn down.
When I think of him, I think of 2009 and 2010, because within like an 18-month period, 3 of my immediate family members all had to have surgery for various reasons, and some of them went well and some of them didn't go well, and just like being definitely like wanting to run away from that and avoid going home and avoid going to hospital and avoid dealing with the fact that it was something that was really happening.
Next question is, what drew you to Jesus the first time? Or you keep getting drawn back to it, what keeps drawing you back? Give me a couple seconds to think. Scott, what do you think?
A sense of authenticity. I feel like Jesus is so much more reliable than anything that we can find here. And sometimes it's a hard thing for me to picture because sometimes I feel like he's never here. Because you can never actually tangibly see him. But Jesus has been gracious in providing me peace when I see it.
I think a lot of the time, like, my constant quest to be perfect at, like, everything in my life is, like, over and over again, like, I'm trying to, like, fix things, and I'm trying to control things, and I'm trying to make things, like, go how I want it to go. But then every single time I realize that the only perfect thing, like, about my life that could ever be perfect about my life is the part of my life that is, like, with Jesus. And Jesus is the only perfect part of it.
I just see the world around me for first year at Vanderbilt, what is it back in high school, and I just like ask myself the question, is this all there is? Is there nothing more? Jesus is there. It gives meaning to the meaninglessness that I see around me, just how broken the world is.
So this is the next picture we start to see. It's this picture of Jesus. It's this picture of encountering Jesus. So we'll read Ruth 2:1-7. Probably the longest bit of the text we'll read. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man in the clan of Lehi, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor." She said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. She happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was in the clan of Lehi. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem. And he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." And Boaz said to his young man, who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is a young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers." So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. And this is, in case you haven't figured this out, Boaz is this picture of Jesus in the Old Testament. And it's so cool because I think there's so many things that it reveals about the character of Jesus in this moment. The first thing we see is that Jesus is welcoming, or Boaz is welcoming, because the first thing he walks up to his lowly servants, he's like, "Hey, howdy, how are you?" And they respond, and there's this calling, this welcome. We see this when Jesus welcomes the little children. He's like, he like holds them, and I always wanted to be the little kid that runs up to Jesus like, "Please!" And like he picks me up, because that's like an image in my head that I've always related to, because Jesus has always got his arms welcoming people. The next thing we see is he notices the lost. The first thing Boaz sees, he sees this Brandon. He's like, "Who's that girl?" But she's obviously not supposed to be there. He's like, "Who's that?" And he asks questions about her. And we see the same thing when Jesus is walking around. You know the song when you sang when you're a little kid, and you're like, "We little Zacchaeus in the tree," and Jesus is walking like, "Dude, come down." And like that was this reaction because Jesus immediately saw the lost in the area and brought them near. And the next thing he did is he went out and sought out and he provided for them in this moment. We see this. Boaz immediately intentionally goes and talks to her. He doesn't just notice her, he goes after her. And he starts having this conversation with her. And the same thing we see Jesus, there's a time when Jesus is hanging out with Peter, and Peter's Peter. And he's hanging out with Peter, and he looks at Peter and goes, "Hey, the devil wants you." And I just want to have a little side note with you in case you didn't figure this out. The devil was after you. And Jesus looks at Peter, and the same thing he says to us. He goes, "But don't worry, I got you. I'm praying for you. You're going to be all right. There's this whole thing you don't know yet, sheep." We're having a conversation. It's going to be great. And then the next thing we see is that he provides so much. Boaz goes out of the way, starts talking to her, and he goes And he lets her eat out of his like secret stash, and he just starts pouring food on her so she can take it back to Naomi. And he starts just providing so much. And the same thing that Jesus does when he's hanging out with 4,000, 5,000 people on the side of a hill, and he's like, here, we're going to feed them real quick. Provides everything for them. Then has leftovers, like they were stored in the fridge back then, which is not possible. And this is what happens. So these are the things we start to see Boaz do. It's the same things we see Jesus do. And then the coolest part, and what's in this section, is that Boaz is a kinsman redeemer. And this is a weird, complicated term from Old Testament, so I'm going to kind of unpack it a little bit. What would happen in the Old Testament is if you couldn't afford anything, you were broke, you can end up in bondage or slavery, where you can mortgage, struggling, yourself off if you disappeared. And then the only way out was if someone came back and redeemed you or bought you out. And usually that had to be someone close. That's why it's kinsman. Someone the nearest relative, the oldest nearest relative, could redeem you. It's where that word comes from. And so what happened is when Lucky or Lucky had decided to leave with his family, they mortgaged off everything they had and they left. And so when they came back, they had nothing. They were in bondage. They had absolutely zero. This is why Ruth is wandering around the fields trying to pick up grain on the ground. They have zero. It is famine. And Boaz has this right that he can do, is he can redeem them in this moment. And this is the same picture, in case you're not seeing the parallels, it's the same picture of Jesus. Where the people in bondage and slavery, they're picking up the grains of the dirt and the ground. And Jesus, being our kinsman, can come in and redeem us. And we're going to dive into that in the next section. So we get this picture. We go from a picture of famine and frustration to a picture of who Jesus is. And then we get a picture of refuge and redemption. The one thing I want to point out, and I think it's so key before we jump to the third picture, is that Naomi knew Boaz before she left. She knew exactly who he was. I think there's a lot of us, we know exactly who Jesus is. And yet somewhere along the way we got lost and forgot who he is. And there's some of us, there's Ruth, who are encountering Jesus right now or just about to encounter Jesus. And you're going to watch as God's going to take this encounter and completely reveal himself back to Naomi. So this is where we get the third picture. We get this picture of redemption and refuge. We start to see God is starting to stir it back in Naomi. She's suddenly reminded of who Boaz is, who Jesus is. And so she looks at Ruth. She's got that creative spark. I don't know if you've ever seen someone like paint a Picasso or whatever that is, like painting, and they're like really inspired. Their eyes light up. Playing music, you play your kids, you just light up at that moment. And this is what she starts to light up. She's like, all right, I got a plan. All right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go up. He's going to be working. He's going to go to sleep. You're going to go and you're going to lay at his feet. You know, that's weird, but that's what you're going to do. Feet's down, but we're going to lay there. We're going to latch on. Then immediately the first thought I got was, there's this story in the New Testament. Jesus is hanging out with Mary and Martha and their sisters, and they're in the house, and Martha's running all over the place because she clearly was a Vanderbilt student. She does everything. And Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus, just trying to get as close as she can, as close as she possibly can to these feet. And this is me. It's something God's reminded me of all this semester. It's just in these moments, I just need to remember who Jesus is in this picture and just get as close as I can to his feet and just try to hold on as tight as I possibly can. And this is what Naomi says. She says, go. He's going to lay there. You just need to grab on. Just lay there and hold on tight. And I love how Boaz responds, or Jesus responds, and it's in this text. We're going to jump. At midnight, the man was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. That would startle me too. He said, who are you? And she answered, I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer. He said, may you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, that you have not gone after young men and the poor and rich. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask for you, and for all my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. And I love how he responds to this moment. It's this really weird moment where she just curled up at his feet. And he looks at her, and the big thing he goes, don't worry, I'm going to wrap you in my wings. And wings in this term is it's the hem of the cloak, and he just kind of like tossles his blanket over it, but there's so much symbolism in that. It's a direct reference to Psalms when David said, he wraps me in the wings, in the shadow of his wings. It's this image of God just wrapping us in under. He says, come here. And then the next morning he wakes up, the first thing he does, he's like, here's some food, let me provide for you for today. Don't worry, we got this. And he just gives her like 3 weeks worth of food. He already gave her like 2 weeks. She's just got stacks on stacks of food. It's just a lot. And then the next thing we see is he immediately steps into action. And it's the same thing that Jesus does. And I think it's so cool is that Jesus responds to us in a way that he wraps us in the shadow of his wings. And the shadow of his wings are then outstretched arms and a bloody cross. And he wraps us up and he covers us in these wings in this moment. And then throughout his entire gospel, he keeps saying the thing he loves to say, and it's one of my favorites. He just says, take heart, take heart, take heart, take heart, take heart, take heart. In case you haven't figured it out, take heart. I'm going to provide for today. Don't worry, I got today. Tomorrow's going to be today, and I got today and tomorrow. Today, I got you. And then Jesus goes on an immediate mission to redeem our souls and provide refuge for us. That's his whole point and the whole purpose. And we see this image. You have this image of famine and frustration. And then you have this image of who Jesus is. And then you have an image of what Jesus does. And then there's refuge and redemption. He goes out and pursues us. Before we get to this last image, I just want to ask you a question. Same thing. This question is, when's a time that you just wanted to latch on to the feet of Jesus? Give you a couple seconds to think about it. Michael, what'd you think?
I think when I first got here, I had a really good summer, and I was able to see just how God was faithful and how He used me and how He used people in my life. When I got here, there were really too many people, and I had to start from zero again. And it was just this time where I just wanted to be as close as possible to God, remembering all He's done for me.
Billy, what are your thoughts?
That's a little jump right
You got things up?
Yeah. Today,
Today.
I was having class today, and I'm going to take on the center, and I'm really scared and like really nervous about it. And I was having quiet time today, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so afraid. Like, all I want to do is just know that like I will have Jesus to cling on to hold on to so tightly." And like I just wanted to do that so badly. And I guess I did. I was, but like just be with Him and be there and know that like no matter how scared I am, like, it's okay because like I will be there. I'm just holding on to Him, and it will be okay because of that.
One more person.
I want to come back to Him when I feel furthest away from Him. When it's so hard to see that He's close to you, and it's so hard to run back to Him if you've been feeling far away from Him for a while. It's hard to take that first step. Where you just want it so badly. It's sometimes hard to motivate yourself to do things.
Thank you. So you have this picture of famine and frustration. And then you have this picture of Jesus and encountering Jesus. And you have this picture of redemption and refuge. And I'm going to get this picture of marriage and harvest because I just want to remind us after famine.
It's harvest.
It's harvest. So Boaz gets up in the morning and he sends her on her way and he provides for her and he goes immediately into action. And I'm not going to get into the legal mumbo jumbo because it's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo and I don't like politics, but he steps in and he immediately goes to work. And I kind of thought, because I'm thinking, I was like, Boaz, Jesus, there's a lot of times I don't see Jesus like immediately go to work. I pray this and it's like 2.5 weeks later, Jesus finally decides to maybe give me like half an answer. I'm like, was really wrestling with that. I don't quite understand this logic. And Jesus casually reminded me with help with some mentors. Casually. First thing he reminded me was that he was outside of time. He knew time. He knows when it's going to happen, and he knows what's already happened, and he knows what's happening now. And his timing is the right timing. Another thing I got reminded today is that Jesus always immediately goes into action. We don't know in this story. We know results happen. We don't know how fast those results do happen. Just because Jesus, you don't see the results immediately, does not mean that he's not acting immediately. So this is what Boaz does. He steps in. He does this weird trade a shoot thing once again, feet are gross, I don't understand. And then we get this picture of marriage. And so he buys her back, he redeems her, he redeems the family, he gets to marry Ruth. And we'll reveal this, it's a secret some people know, and obviously a lot more people don't know now. But I am obsessed with marriage. I'm obsessed with finding my partner. I'm obsessed with that intimate relationship. It drives, it's like top 3 desires. It's what I want. I'm so obsessed with it. So this is this picture that Jesus begins to paint for us. Is that the plan in the beginning was that he was going to redeem us and then marry us. And some of you girls think about the marriage, you're like, oh, I get to wear the veil, and I get to throw it back and kiss that guy. And I'm thinking, I get to wear the veil, and I get to throw it back and kiss Jesus. This is awesome. I'm so excited. It just pumps me up, because it's like this moment that this is what Jesus, in the whole plan in the beginning, he goes, there's this picture of famine, and then you're going to meet me, and there's going to be redemption and refuge, and the whole point is that you get to marry me, we get to have everlasting life, and it's awesome. It's such a cool moment. And it's such a cool picture that he paints for us, is that he goes after her. He goes after us. And I know that when I say this, some of you go like, that's like this big eternal plan. And sometimes it's really hard to grasp it. Like, right now I feel like famine, and what happens when I die doesn't really relate to me right now, because I want to die, but I don't feel like I'm actually going to die. It just sucks. And I think I kept telling you it's a harvest story, because after famine, all right, come on, keep on your toes. It's a harvest story, and I want to remind you, Naomi is the one who's been so frustrated with life. And we see this picture. She gets a son. We're not going to kind of explain the legal moments, but she gets Ruth's son out of this, and she reaps a harvest. She's lost everything. And God reveals through Jesus and through what he does and through his redemption and refuge his goodness back in her life. And it's even cooler. You look at who the son is. His name's Obed. That means servant, ironically. Jesus is all about that irony. And he's the grandfather of King David. And if you don't know King David, he's in the whole genealogy of Jesus. And this is the line that Jesus is going to come out of. This is this woman who swore her name was bitterness, which is a weird name. God goes after famine. So this is this last picture. It's this picture of marriage, and it's this picture of harvest. And I think in this moment, this is the thing, ladies and gentlemen, in this moment that we face the famine, we face the frustration, we just got to learn. And what it's going to take is for us to curl up and latch on to the feet of Jesus. And trust when he says, take heart. There's a harvest coming. Dear Father, Lord, I just thank you. Lord, I just thank you for who you are. Lord, there's so much in this text. There's so much that you just speak and you jump out of the page and you just remind us in the midst of famine, in the midst of frustration, you just remind us of how good you are. You remind us who you are. You remind us what you do. Lord, for anyone who's in this room, whose finals come up and what are going on in life, that they're in this season of famine or this season of this frustration, Lord, I ask that you just meet them or remind them that harvest will be there. Lord, remind them just to cling to you in this moment. It's all you do, Lord. I just ask in this moment that we we will be reminded of our position at the feet of Jesus for how awesome he is, and know that in the very end there's going to be an awesome wedding day. And even myself get to throw back that veil. Lord, thank you for what you do. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. We're going to do one last worship song.